All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. Tonight, and I say tonight, you see how dark it is out in Georgia here tonight? You've got the same going on, Trevor, because you're Georgia. We have Trevor Maurer, and he is the president and CEO of Smile Source. I've known Trevor for probably going on about 6 years, ever since the Academy of Comprehensive Aesthetics kind of morphed into, is morphed a good word, Trevor? Morphed into kind of the Smile Source?
I won't object.
For the meeting component of it. But we were kind of talking offline, Trevor, about, really exactly what Smile Source does. And Craig asked, is it like a DSO? And you said, no, it's really, there's no ownership of the practices. It's more an affiliation through just through economies of scale discounts and masterminding and stuff like that. So it's a cool group of guys. I actually know a lot of the guys and gals that are in Smile Source, and you guys have a good reputation in the industry. Cool. But tonight, so Trevor, welcome to the show, pal.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Anything I need to miss on the intro there? I know you're Canadian, so I won't really hold that against you or bring that up. He's always talking about hockey. He's in the wrong. He's talking about hockey in the state of Georgia. And I'm like, dude, no one watches hockey here. Our hockey team can't even survive here.
No, 0 for 2. We've left twice. 2 teams have left.
Anyway, anything you want to add to your glorious intro?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, bud. So tonight what we're going to talk about is something that Trevor's got a lot of research on. And as you all know, as listeners of the podcast, we do not like to bring people on for like glorified pamphlets kind of promoting their own company. But what we do like is kind of extracting the value of a lot of the data that's been maybe collaborated from that, if that makes any sense. So tonight we're going to really talk about branding and does that matter? And I asked Trevor before we were online, and I said, are we talking about the practice name? And you said, yeah, that's one component of it, but there's other kind of branding things like the practice name, also things like Invisalign and stuff like that. So I have never heard a podcast or really talk that's as niched as that. Like, how do you choose a name? But honestly, as an entrepreneur or a dental entrepreneur, I kind of struggle with that when I look at even just acquisitions. I look at something, I'm like, well, I would rebrand that to, XYZ City Dental or whatever. So I'm interested to hear what your research has concluded on this, so that it can be just not me from a gut perspective thinking what to name a practice. Let's just say there's an acquisition in my future.
Sure.
But what's the data that supports that, what monetizes that the best, or from a consumer standpoint?
Sure.
So, Craig, you on with us? Okay.
I actually am in Florida, and although it is dark out, I have lights, so I've turned them on. So that's what.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying that I know that you're going through a thunderstorm, and that lights are not.
It looks bad. If I turn all these lights on, the camera does something all funky. So I want to stay as handsome as possible.
Yeah, you look better in dark.
I do. I have a face for radio.
Right. No, I'm excited to hear this. I'm excited, Trevor, because obviously, Peter and I have very different models and also different brands. Atlanta Dental Spa and Spodak Dental Group. So very appropriate to have this conversation so we can highlight the differences between our two models in that regard.
Sure. Happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
Want me to just roll in there? You can
roll into it, man. Lay it on us. As
you said, and this is the non-commercial part. As you said, I'm with Smile Source. And so Smile Source is a great dental name, but anybody that thinks they have to change their name to Smile Source to be a part of our network, that's not true. You don't have to change your name. In fact, you don't have to do anything, because if we start telling you what to do, that's fee splitting. Mm-hmm. So we're very, very independent. Private practice is alive and well. We don't own the practice. So when we look at how to brand, right, we look at Dr. John Smith, dentist, right? So we ran some testing on who would you seek information from, because we talked about patients are consumers before they're patients, right? They're shopping, and they haven't even chosen to spend a dental dollar yet. They've chosen to spend $1, and you hope it's on dentistry. And then when they choose dentistry, you hope it's you as the dentist. You're looking for share of wallet and then share of dentistry once that share of wallet is focused on dentistry. So Dr. John Smith, 15% of these consumers would seek information from that brand, logo, and doctor name. So if you think about how it all looks, right? There's the branding, the logo, and the affiliated name.
Can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
I want to get the context a little bit better. So here I am searching. I'm Mrs. Jones sitting here searching. I'm pulling it up, and here come all the dentists on my Google search report, dentist near me. So you're saying that Dr. John Smith, DDS would only get clicked on, would only have preferential seeking information 15% of the time?
So if you have 4 logos up, so this is not a Google rank search. This is just 4 logos side by side, right? With brand logo and doctor name.
4 logos side by side. Okay.
Yeah. Brand logo, doctor name.
Got it.
So we're not getting into Google Analytics tonight.
Okay. All right.
Do that later.
Well, I just wanted to clarify.
No, it's good. Some of the listeners might have thought we were going there. So Dr. John Smith is 15%, right? That's pretty low, but it's also pretty boring, right? Dr. Peter Boulden, of course, and Dr. Craig Spodak are much.
It's way more exciting.
But doctor name dentist, kind of blah.
Okay.
Believe it or not, so Monarch Dental. So pick any
Yikes.
large name. Monarch Dental. Dr. Peter Boulden has a 22% preference.
Oh, so with the affiliation and the corporate, it goes up a little bit.
The consumers think that there's a little more behind it. Maybe there's more training. Maybe there's more support. Maybe there's extended payment terms, better deal, whatever it is. They like that better.
All right.
And then Dr. John Smith, a member of ABC Associates, is even higher at 27%. Because again, he's part of a larger group, but doesn't have the corporate stigma.
Okay.
So you get the independent, you've got tied to corporate, the independent tied to an association, and then SmileSource was tested specifically, and we had a 37% preference. SmileSource, they like the catchy brand name, but SmileSource, a member of Dr. Peter Boulden, right? Dr. John Smith. So in that case, it's just that SmileSource maybe had a better ring than Monarch Dental, but they're providing the same comfort to a consumer that there's something else behind this doctor.
Yeah, but why? Because you're not a household name.
No, not at all.
Right. So like, why does it matter? I mean, you just may have gotten lucky with like, oh, we picked SmileSource. It's kind of catchy. It has 2 S's and like, it looks good on paper. Like, well, how is that? I'm not trying to bust your chops, but like, how is that, hold more clout than anything else? Meaning if neither one of them are known as a household name, why does it matter?
2 answers. One is sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. So I'll take it.
All right.
Right. But in terms of what the association is, right? If it's backed by something else. So the Monarch and the Smile examples, even the affiliated group backed by something else. The clear winner is any affiliation above Dr. John Smith, dentist.
Okay. All right. So that's one set of data. So, but you're comparing that against Dr. John Smith as being the branding name, right?
Right.
All right. So how does that compare though? Now, how does SmileSource or something go up against when you have, like the city modifier, let's call it, Chattanooga Smiles or something like that.
Or Atlanta Dental Spa.
Or Spodak Dental Group.
So in that case, Spodak Dental Group would have more appeal because you immediately recognize its group. There's more than Craig.
Yeah, Trevor's just saying that to be nice. We get him up.
He's not.
Like, nah.
No, I mean, I don't ever want to say anything nice about Peter though. I mean, love a guy.
I mean, Trevor keeps it real. That's why I kind of like him. So no, he's not. He's not. So anything with a group, okay. So Trevor, if you were a dentist starting out, let's just say you were about to get out of school, hang your shingle. What would be your? I can't wait to use this word, Craig. What would be your active nomenclature?
Oh, look at that. Well,
it's not one of your core words, Peter.
Yes, it is. It's not perpetuity. It's not
perpetuity or
scale or
Wow. I think that's word of the day. Did you get the word of the day email, Peter?
I have but I have a very small. I have 5 words that I just deploy, and everyone like my wife is like, why do you use those big words? I'm like, I use 5. That's about it. It's about it. And Craig and my wife were busting on me this weekend, literally together.
Back to your question.
Yeah, back to my question. Thank you.
You graduate. You're going to hang your shingle. Basically, how would you pick your? I think nomenclature was your word.
Yes.
But so actually, you made a lot of bold, assumptive statements there because if you look at a graduate, first of all, less than 10% of grads want to get out and own a practice.
You mean current grads?
Current grads when they're
millennial grads.
Millennial grads. When they exit, less than 10% want to own a practice. Now that number escalates.
Has that changed, Trevor, over the years?
Absolutely.
God, yeah. Are you kidding me?
Big time.
I mean,
Is that a
hey,
song?
I'm just look. I'm a scientist. I want the data. I'm a scientist, guys.
Come on, you don't need you don't need data. You don't need data on a lot of the. I mean, it's incredible.
Okay, so no one wants to own anymore. Only 10%. Trevor, I interrupted you.
Graduates. Only
Of
10%.
graduates. Got it.
Now they go out there and the turnover in corporate dentistry is 30%. So every 3 years they're moving on. Could be to another corporate gig, but the likelihood of them to get into independent.
So the likelihood of them staying past 3 years is less than 30%.
30% is a turnover. Yeah, your
30%
average dentist is in corporate for 3 years.
Okay, and then they go do what?
Something else could be other corporate or private practice, but the less than 10% want to get into private practice at graduation.
Okay.
It goes up significantly because there's still the majority of the market is private practice, right?
Okay. All right. So let me reframe my question then. All right. So now I'm a dentist. I'm a 3-year out dentist. I've done my corporate and I want to go out and name a practice and I don't want to make mistakes. I want this to be laser focused marketing with all the data and I'm going to name it and I don't care what I name it. Go.
I want your name on it somewhere.
Like the last name?
I want the doctor's name somewhere on it.
Okay.
As a sub-brand.
That's ringing alarms for me, buddy. But go ahead.
As a sub-brand, but I want them to be affiliated with something perceptibly larger.
Of course you do.
Dental Group. Avondale Dental Group, right? Atlanta Dental Spa.
Okay.
Spas.
Okay.
Right?
Spas. All right. So, all right. I'm going to pause you right there for a second.
Sure.
So I understand that you guys are kind of an affiliation group, but like, let's say one of my favorite books is called Built to Sell. Okay. And if you haven't read the book, it's not, you're literally not building the practice to sell, but when you build it to sell with systems and kind of beginning with the end in mind, it just runs a little bit better. So then you have a happier business that you really don't want to sell. You have to read the book. But anyway,
the subtitle of the book is Built to Sell, Creating Businesses That Can Thrive Without You.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Shut up, Greg.
But I'm just saying, but I'm just saying, like, that's the book. That's
great.
So my point is with that is that if you're looking at one day either onboarding a partner or selling your practice and walking away, then having your last name associated with the new buyer or new partner doesn't want to get into that mess of like, well, why would I buy the last name / whatever group? That makes sense, Trevor?
So I want to make sure I was clear that the doctor's name is a sub-brand.
I don't know what a sub-brand is.
He means like Monarch, Dr. Peter Boulden of Monarch Dental.
So it's, Monarch Dental, Dr. Peter Boulden. Monarch Dental, right? So that's the sub piece. There still is a relationship in private practice dentistry. I'm talking private practice dentistry.
Yep.
There's still a relationship with the doctor and the hygiene staff and the team, right? That's really, really important. So I wouldn't suggest, although a lot of people do it successfully, to just brand ABC Dental Company.
Okay. You would not suggest that?
I wouldn't suggest that. And all of our research, it favors a sub-brand doctor name. A community tie.
But what if it's more than one doctor? Like, what if it's a group practice? So you're saying you could still have, right? Like,
I think we're being very. I think the way we started this question was, I'm hearing in your mind, Trevor, that this is a typical 1 or 2 doctor practice. Is that what we're talking about? Or you even talking about?
Yeah, you're right. You did say that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Or I did say that.
Yeah. So let's just take that because I'm understanding that like some community-based name, Atlanta Dental, Spa, and then Dr. Peter Boulden. That would be the highest ranking affinity according to what you're saying, right? Something local and something non-doctor affiliated, but then having the doctor as a sub-brand. But then just jump into what Peter and I have, multi-location and or multi-doctor. How do you feel about that?
Then I don't think the doctor's name should be anywhere on it. I don't have that research, just my knowledge of dentistry. I'd say you're going to talk yourself out of some buyers if you're too important in the name.
So the reason I like the city and the name, Trevor, and maybe you have some web research to kind of confirm or deny, but a long time ago from the era, circa 2005, when you used to be able to kind of gamify the search engines a little bit, it was always Google was not as sophisticated as it is now. So it didn't know kind of what you were wanting. And so it was always a city modifier. So it'd be Atlanta slash veneer, Atlanta Veneers, Atlanta Invisalign, Atlanta, and it was always the city modifier. And so if you had something in your domain name that had your city modifier, it was a lot of bonus points towards the algorithm back in the day. So maybe I'm just still stuck in old school of like, you need the city in which you kind of practice from an SEO perspective. And I know we're going off tangent, but I still think it's important from a branding perspective. Do you have anything to add to that? Confirm, deny?
I don't confirm or deny using the city name. I don't think that I have the expertise to tell you what Google's going to say about the city name in your name.
No, I know that, but like I guess I'm trying to kind of merge data plus real life, SEO and all this stuff. So, sure. It's tough. So in conclusion, it's pretty hard to name a practice effectively from the beginning to the end.
Just don't name it Dr. John Smith.
All right, good. So we got that.
Would be the big takeaway.
Good.
Do you want to talk a little more about branding with products?
Well, I mean, only if it's going to benefit. Like, I don't really care about Invisalign. I don't really care about. And you mean if it's going to benefit the practice or the practices, then sure.
We'll tell you what. Cut this out if you don't find it interesting. So, I spent a lot of time in the contact lens business, and one of the products that we sold against was this Visticon contact lens from Johnson & Johnson. Mm-hmm. And the fascinating point of that was that when a patient asks for a brand by name, the doctor gave it to them 87% of the time. Mm-hmm. Right? So now make the connection to Invisalign.
Yep.
If you ask for Invisalign by name, I think also that 87% of doctors would say, yeah, sure, because you asked for it by name.
Well, if you're a provider, I'm going to push back on that too. Sorry, because this is what I do. So let's say I come into your office and I'm like, hey doc, I want Invisalign. Well, I'm going to say, but I'm only a Clear Connect provider. I'm going to say, cool. Well, we do that, but it's called a different brand.
I think this example, sorry to cut you, Peter. Invisalign's hard because that's like automatopoeia. It's like Kleenex. But like Lumineers, let's go to the Lumineers. Like we didn't, I guarantee you, Peter, you never did Lumineers, right?
Never. But I marketed it.
Right. So let's go with the Lumineer conversation because that Clear Correct doesn't have, at least at this point, as we're recording, does not have the ability to compete with Invisalign right now. But Lumineers was a perfect thing that you would have never done Lumineers. I wouldn't have either, but we both marketed for them.
Well, it was just, but Lumineers took something that we've been doing in dentistry for 30 years, a no prep veneer, and gave the Kleenex or the tissue, the Kleenex, or tried to give it the Kleenex name. Right. But Invisalign was a new proprietary technology. So that's why I didn't do Lumineers, is because I knew I could deliver a superior product that we already had lots of data for that looked better, that my ceramists have been doing for 20 years. Yeah. So, and I would see Lumineer stuff that I knew it was all being shipped overseas, and it just wasn't good. So I agree with you, Craig, that the funnel, I think brands are great for dentistry, especially when they do them business to consumer, right? Because Invisalign said, hey, screw this. We're just going to go right to the consumer and have them demand it, which is smart, which is probably what that Visticon or whatever you just said did the same thing. They probably ran ads to generate the buzz. B2C.
They approached the existing manufacturers. Nobody bought them. And then they went to consumer and said, screw you guys. We'll just let the consumer, the doctor use it.
Invisalign, in my opinion, in my career, has been the first one that's done that. They kind of bucked the trend of like, instead of advertising to dentists to get them to use it, they just said, let's buck the system and go right from B to C, go B to C as opposed to B to D.
Well, so what we've done organizationally, we don't do any work corporately with Invisalign, right? They don't want to work with our group for whatever reason they have. So we're a proponent of Clear Correct. So the data point I told you, there's a second point that's important, right? So with the contact lens example of Visticon, 87% of doctors, when asked for it, fit that lens, but only 4% of the time did they ask. So a lot of times when they're coming in, they don't really know what it is they want. They know they want their teeth straightened. Right. They want a better smile. And so I think the doctor is more armed than they believe to make the switch, like you two did. But look at you guys have monster practices, right? You didn't cower when a patient said, hey, I want a Lumineer. Oh my God, I better get it for you. Right? You said, hey, I got something else.
Right.
And that's what I want.
Fair.
That's what I want the private practice doctor to do. I want them to do the right thing for the patient and not to be bullied by a brand. Now, branding is great if it fits in with your practice style. But if it doesn't, you should be confident that you know what's right.
Yeah, I mean, so it can be kind of synergistic in any which way, either with your, you know, someone who actually a practice that uses it or don't. It's just good for awareness.
I like your answer. What you and Craig were saying is what you did in the case, and not to bash Lumineers. As far as I know, they're a great company. I don't know much about them, but you know, you guys were successful in your own way, and that's the power of the private practice.
Well, Lumineers isn't a company, is it? Isn't it just a brand?
It's a proprietary brand of micro or prepless veneers from a specific lab, and they license that lab technology to other labs. So it's scalable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care. I'm just saying, if someone asks for it,
But it's the same way that, you know, Apple made the iPod. They weren't the first MP3 player.
Right.
But I do believe that, you know, savvy to market that Lumiere thing. I mean, I remember buying AdWords on Lumineers just to have that presence, even though
for sure.
But the bait switch for like Invisalign, because Invisalign's a little near and dear to my heart because that's all I do. There's not at this point with the patents that are still out. I mean, I recognize that there are patents that are going to be eroding for Invisalign, but as we speak today, there's really nothing yet that can compete with Invisalign. And there's a lot of doctors out there, I think to their disservice, are like, you don't really need Invisalign. We can do it this way or that way. Or they're telling patients flat out, this is Invisalign, and it's really not. So that's why
that's bad news.
I'm sorry?
That's bad news, you said.
Yeah, that is. And that's why Invisalign's going to such great lengths, including putting their logos on the actual Invisalign aligners. I've had several people say to me, like, Invisalign doesn't work. You know, I'm going to bring all my stuff in. I'll show you what I did. And it's not Invisalign at all. It's just something totally different. So they recognize that patent infringement or that IP infringement's a big issue for them. But they can't control it. That's why Invisalign's doing their own scanning centers and their own call center. Because people were calling Invisalign and saying, hey, I want a doctor, or go to the website. They were directing to them, and then they'd bait and switch them into braces or something else. And now Invisalign is actually calling your office together with the patient and saying, hey, get Marianne for a consult, and tracking your conversions, which is interesting. Did you know that, Trevor?
I didn't know about the calling together, but obviously I knew about those centers. And you know, I've seen some of Costco's and malls and whatnot.
I don't think they're going in Costco's and malls as far as I know, but they are going to storefronts. There is an Invisalign storefront, I think, in the San Francisco area. But it's not going to be.
I've seen a picture of a kiosk in a Costco where, you know, see if Invisalign's right for you, and then they direct you to a doctor.
No way.
To a scanning. Wow.
Yeah.
It's so wild. Wow.
So, Trevor, you touched on something earlier. I want to pivot since you have a lot of corporate knowledge. You know, not that you're straight up a corporate, but you know that as we were before I hit record, we were talking about, you know, the prevalence of corporate dentistry coming in place. And I think it's something that's really interesting. Honestly, Craig, I don't think we can talk about it enough because everywhere we go, I mean, I just went to a summit that was literally just on corporate dentistry, you know, the Dentist Entrepreneur Organization. So that was really focused around DSOs and a lot of corporate talk there. And so I think that's the biggest fear that's going on in the airwaves. Wouldn't you agree, Craig, Trevor?
No, 100%. There's
yeah.
Well, that and there's a lot of people that are not in fee-for-service dentistry that are very fearful of quote unquote dental insurance, right? But,
yeah, I think it's a confluence of factors, but corporate kind of sums it all up. Corporate adds the convenience. I mean, there's people that are worried about convenience and about HR and all that stuff, but corporate kind of encompasses all of it because it's that support. You know, it's the HR support, it's the vendor relationships, it's the negotiating of fees with PPOs. So that's the one kind of blanket complaint that wraps, I think, it all up pretty well for most dentists.
I think you're right. And I think it's important for the dentist to know whether they're fresh out of school, or the example earlier, 3 years out of school, or they're 55 years old, right? Are they going to be a good employee? Because when you're an employee, you're an employee. You know what? You're working Friday. Sorry. You didn't.
So what do you feel came first, the chicken or the egg? Meaning, so you talked about there only being 10% of dentists wanting to come out and have a private practice, but corporate dentistry, big corporate groups are also doing lunch and learns at dental schools, kind of singing the tunes of like, hey, come with us, here's a signing bonus, et cetera. So yes, I know there's a millennial thing. We kind of made reference to that, but you think it's just this like perfect storm, or you think there's a lot of influence from top down?
Well, I think the reason corporate is recruiting at schools is because they're not getting enough talented doctors at the price point they want in the open market.
Okay.
Right. So that's why you go to a school. That's why you bring pizzas and kegs of beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, I think the timing is perfect for the valuations from, it could be private equity, it could be the Ontario Teachers Fund, it doesn't matter. But the valuations are great for dentistry because you can leverage the purchase based upon the future anticipated revenue, right? It's a cash-rich business.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go out there and these big funds can pay 9, 10, 11, 12 times EBITDA and still make money on it. You know, someone's going to not get a chair when the music stops at some point.
Yeah.
There's an economic downturn, but it's wonderful right now. There's all kinds of money that is pouring into dental practices. You know, we're approached all the time at SmileSource saying, hey, we've got this big group of practices. Why don't we start rolling them up and buying them? That's not our mantra. We're private practice independent. But I mean, they're knocking on every door, right? So I think that it is a little bit of the perfect storm. You got money that's making a nice return, right? So you've got interested money. You've got a labor pool that is interested in the message, because if only 10% of students want to own a practice, I don't think that's necessarily because of the messaging they're hearing in the schools, Peter. I think it's part of it. But also I think it is generational, right? I think you've got a generation shift in terms of wanting to hang a shingle and do it themselves or get a paycheck. A lot of these docs come out, they say, hey, I want to get $200 to $250 my first year.
Mm-hmm.
So shit for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? There's no way. And then also you've got a gender shift.
Yep.
Right? You've got
massive, loan amounts are 2 and 3 times from when I graduated, which
I mean,
it's just crazy.
Let's not just leave it there though. Let's look at what it used to be to open up a dental practice 10 years ago. What did you need? You could get by with a place to sit and a place to spit, as I say. And now you need cone beam, you might need CEREC, you need a scanner, Invisalign, and then also let's look at work now. I mean, look at the amount of HR and employment changes that have happened in the last 5 years. It's dizzying. You need an HR expert, overtime changes, different regulatory changes.
You do, but you don't need to sell your practice to get that expertise help. So
I know, but these are the confluence of factors that go into the decision.
Right, but I think that's what he's about to say is that's where kind of groups that are kind of helping the cottage industry, like SmileSource, I think is really helping the little guy win. Is that kind of what?
So I actually want to take it a little further, because there are people that compare us to a buying group. And I think, Peter, you did it one time, right?
Yeah. I think I just did it 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. That's not where you're going to get your help, right? For HR issues, right? You're not going to have somebody supporting you there. You're not going to get your help there recruiting and staffing, right? And so when a group of docs work together under a franchise model, which is a scary word, but that's the model we use, because then a lot of what we do is not collusion. But when we can work together, you can work together in a non-owned format. So you can, if you want, you can work together in an owned format. So dentists can work together as employees or as affiliates, right? And so we love the affiliate model because you still own it, but you can get the benefits of what some people seek in a group practice. So I don't think you have to throw up your hands just because it's complex. Although, Craig, it is really complex, and there's all kinds of stories about people that make accidental mistakes and are significantly penalized for that.
I think Craig and I, we're fans of, we're fans of the cottage industry kind of situation, and not that it has to stay the same way, but Craig being from, he's a 3rd generation dentist, and it's kind of all I've ever done in my life. So I'm passionate about the non-corporate aspects. Even though we've kind of grown a little bit, it's still a to me, it's not, my business is not corporate dentistry by any means. So I like anything that adds to the strength of the relationship-based dentist practice, the cottage industry that I talked about. I'm all about, and I seem to think that's when I think of y'all. I think of you giving strength to the small guy. And I say small guy, I mean the guy who's not in corporate, a guy or gal who's not in corporate.
I think there's some point that deserves some attention here. As you're talking, Peter, I'm thinking to myself, we have to have a different term. Like corporate, you're a corporation and I'm a corporation. Dr. Jones that has shares is a corporation. And although we're big fans of the cottage industry, we have sincere concerns about the true cottage practitioner, solo doctor trying to work 32 to 40 hours a week, banker's hours in a strip mall somewhere. So it's not just the Smile Sources coming to rescue, it's regional groups like ours as well. Whether you're a big footprint or a smaller footprint, we're actually, I wouldn't call us part of the cottage. We're obviously we're doing it for the benefit of the patient.
You're right.
We don't have demands on our associates where, oh, you only produced 2 crowns today, you better produce 6 tomorrow. We don't have those types of conversations. We always want what's ethical and best for the practice, for the patients. But corporate DSOs are putting that downward pressure, like you've got to sell, you've got to do this. And they're looking at micro profitability versus macro. You and I don't mind buying something or hiring a new doc, knowing that it might take 6 months or a year to get them on plane, or up to par.
Yeah.
Corporate is like, you got to make money, like true corporate, like DSO, venture capital backed DSO is like, you need money this week. Borrow from next month's schedule to make this month profitable. That's Wall Street. And I think we're painting with broader brush.
Yeah, you're right. We compare with like these 2 buckets, like, and you're right. There's really a lot more buckets of comparison. It's not just the cottage industry versus like this venomous DSO corporate PE backed whatever group.
Yeah, there's a couple other buckets there. And I wonder what's the majority of practitioners still in this country are the cottage practitioners, right. Trevor? I mean, the majority are solo, open 30 hours a week, no weekend coverage, no expanded hours because they can't, maybe 2-3 chairs. I mean, the average dental practice, as T-Bone says, is what, like $600,000 or $650,000 in gross?
Yeah, 650.
And it's how many chairs? Isn't it like four chairs? Do you know, Trevor?
4
chairs. 4 chairs, $600,000.
Associate, and your average associate, Peter, outperforms the average dental practice in its entirety. So yours and my average associate will produce or collect more than the entire dental practice of the average dentist. So dentist and hygienist and whatever. What does the average dentist have? 1.5 hygienists?
I think you hit on something too powerful, though. You're right. Is that the technology and the convenience is really going to be the disruptor in that model of the single practitioner, meaning that you. Yeah.
Just the same way practitioners are asking for Invisalign because of the awareness that was built. I mean, if Sirona would have invested, or even if Sirona does invest, and I'm just using Sirona, but I know there's lots of scanners, if a scanning milling company like Sirona would invest the money that they, like even 1/10 the money that Invisalign has spent into the direct to consumer, you'd have people, flooding the marketplace asking for single visit crowns. People want to save money. It's just, it's a well-kept secret. To get back to your point of Trevor, when patients ask doctors for specific brands, the doctor feels compelled to do that. That's what happened with Invisalign. But if Sirona, Cyril World, they spend tons of money getting Will Smith on the stage, going to the doctors like, hey, come to Cyril World. It's going to be great. We're hiring Train or U2 to play on the stage. If they just put that money into like direct to consumer, my God, what would happen? Dentists would be frenetically calling the reps. Like, I had 4 people this week asking me for a single visit crown, and then I'm a dinosaur that I give them a temporary. I mean, holy shit, that would be huge. But
Craig, what you said that I think resonates as well is you were starting to talk about the 30, 32 hours a week. I think that that's a fundamental change that the private practitioner needs to make, is they have to recognize, as, and I'll say it, as Aspen Dental has, right, that most patients, a lot of patients want expanded hours. They can't get off work. Well, especially if they're blue collar, right? Blue collar guys are not going to run out at lunch and go to the dental practice, and they want to go evenings, they want to go weekends, right? So that's hard to do alone. And just so you don't paint us with the $650,000 brush at Smile, our average practice is 1.5 dentists, right? So you want to say every 2 or 3 have a full associate, and we're doing 1.2 million in collections. So you can do the math on the per dentist, but what I want you to take away is that for some reason, the practices that are more growth oriented tend to be more attracted to what we do than the smaller practices that consider marketing an expense versus an investment.
That have stagnated. There's stagnant practices. Like, I'm good. They're not in growth mode. They're kind of in defensive mode, if you will.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think because there's a lot of people that until they get over that hump, they have a real sensitivity towards spending to get there, right?
Well,
and then you talked about technology, you talked about marketing. If you just sit there and all you're doing is temps and standard, regular traditional impressions, and you don't have CBCT and you don't have a scanner, then you are going to be stuck.
Right.
At $600,000 for your career.
Well, we all get stuck to our own detriment. The success and failure for all of us isn't getting stuck. No dentist intentionally says, I need a scanner because they just get stuck. They say, my patients like seeing me.
Right.
My patients don't mind.
Or my process isn't broke. Why fix it?
Well, they don't know because everything's micro changes. It's the book, Who Moved My Cheese? You keep doing the same thing over and over and over again for years and years and years. And all of a sudden, suddenly it doesn't work anymore.
The funny thing, you're talking about growth versus defensive, and there's really only two. Like, there's no real such thing as like, I'm just going to coast even, I'm good. I'm just going to like coast along, because you're either growing or dying. But so you have to pick one. And so I think everyone needs to kind of be in growth mode, whether that's, a micro growth or just focusing on something real granular or not. But you have to stay in growth mode no matter who you are, or else you're dead.
Peter,
I think it bears something. Sorry, Trevor. I think it bears just talking just as a bookend on that comment, Peter, is growth mode. We all get stuck in the trap of gross profit. Everybody loves to talk about gross profit. So growth could be trimming your gross and increasing your net.
Or even learning a new skill set, or even like growth at any capacity, like training your team higher or bringing on a little piece of something, right? Learning a little bit of marketing or trying this, but staying committed to the process of growing, whether it's another $1 a year. I don't give a crap what it is, but like being aware that you have to grow, because if you don't grow, you're going to contract just organically.
I'm gonna land this with my favorite saying from Jack
Nice.
Welch.
Land it. Go.
Ready? If the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly.
It's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that does put a nice okay. And that's happening, especially with digital disruption and corporate disruption and consumer disruption, the Amazons and the Ubers. There's all this disruption. So the rate of change, back to your quote, Trevor, is happening exceedingly fast. So is it even possible for the single practitioner?
If they don't get their hooks into some sort of group, I don't know. There's going to be a few. There's going to be a few that make it standalone, but I think that they're going to have to act together in some way.
We had Brian. Do you know Brian Kaleo of Dykema? He's a law group that does a lot of DSO formations, and he was very. He didn't mix his words about the solo practitioner. Isn't that right, Craig? That night. Or I had too many beers to remember.
Are you going there? I'm speaking there in July. Are you going there?
No, we were at neither one. We have conflicts with that course. We were going to go, but both of us have conflict. It came up so quickly on the. It's in July, right? Yeah.
But Kaleo just talked to us about it like a week or two ago.
But anyway, basically, Craig, can help me out here because my memory is like.
The problem is I said to Kaleo said, the era of the solo practice is over, and the problem with this is that it's true, and I do believe that it's going to be. Listen, you could be Michael Appa, and Michael Appa's not even solo, by the way, but you could be this iconic celebrity style dentist like Kevin Sands out in LA, or we know tons of them, and you're going to be fine. But for the average dentist, it's going to be increasingly hard to compete, and it's going to be increasingly hard to stay viable. The issue is that since my first subscription to Dentaltown, which is probably in whenever Dentaltown came out in 1996 or 1996, there was a thread that was the most popular thread. The era of the solo practice is over. So literally for 20 years, we've been talking about this impending doom, and not too much has shifted.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the issue is that everything happens slowly until it's sudden. You don't just drop dead from a heart attack typically. You have a confluence of factors like high blood pressure, blah, 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 blah. And then ultimately, you drop dead from it.
So, it's the tipping point, right? Craig?
Yeah, so it's the tipping point.
And we've reached it, though. The tipping point is what? Gladwell says it's 17 or 18%.
Right.
Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point? 17 or 18% of what?
21 or 22% now of docs are in group practices. I think we've past that tipping point.
Really, 21% are either in groups or DSOs?
Yes.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was 11%.
I'll send you some data.
Holy smokes, that's super cool.
No, that's the fragmentation. Is the Craig? So you're comparing two different. 11% is the fragmentation amount of dental practices. Meaning,
No, that's the consolidation amount specifically. 11% is consolidated. So
Okay.
what does that mean, Trevor? Consolidated versus affiliated with a group practice of some sort. 11% of practices are consolidated. I know that number to be true, especially in the last 6 months.
Well, that's your number. I don't know what.
yeah, that is true. That's what I was about to say. All right. Well, regardless, it's on the rise. So Trevor, that being said, like, how does one know? I'm gonna take a hard right turn into something that you may have some data on as well. Let's say I am the solo practitioner. Let's say I've heard this podcast. Let's say I know what's coming. How do I know when is the right time? What is my strategy? Obviously, I can affiliate with a group like yours or sell. That's an option. Or if I'm in growth mode and I think I've got the chops to kind of compete, and I'm ready to bring on another person, when is it the right time to bring on a partner, an associate, grow, like help us out?
Sure. So again, it's going to come down in the end. The final decision comes down to the individual. So there's no straight formula that your production is X and then you bring on an associate. Otherwise, someone would just post that online and everybody would do it, right?
Right.
There's the abundance mentality, right? So that you want to share your patient base, bring in that associate, have them build out, and then you split off. You start going down to 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, and then get right out of the practice if that's your plan. Or it's scarcity, right? You keep your patients, and then docs will bring out a bunch of PPOs to fill up time for that associate. But I'm not a fan of that because I think that's creating two separate different practices within
a practice.
Within a practice, and I'm not sure that's going to be the best thing for that associate long term.
Or a class system almost,
Yeah, it does. But the right time, it's almost like when you have kids. The right time to have kids when you have the energy.
Yeah.
Right? There's no age that's right. It's just when you can. And so the right time to bring on an associate, we think is when you're going to have to invest some energy, right? Some time, money, and energy in that. And when you have that, that's the right time because you won't always feel that way.
So how do you attract them though in the context of all we've just been talking about, right? Like how is one attracted to come into my private practice, even though I don't have the scale and the energy and all this stuff like the corporate guys or this group? How does what is the best chance to onboard a quality associate?
So just last week, I'm up in Michigan and met with a doc for breakfast through a mutual friend who had gone the corporate route and literally just hung a shingle cold. Didn't even buy a practice. Like was just so absolutely frustrated with being an employee and being treated as an employee because she was an employee. That just said nothing can be worse than this. So her experience wasn't great. Some experiences are awesome, right? I think like I've said before, I think that there's a space for corporate dentistry and there's a space for private practice, independent dentistry. I think they serve different patient bases. But she had just had enough. So where are you going to find these people? I think you're going to find people that have come out of dental school and, Craig and Peter are not going to probably hire a new grad that's slow, right? They have no experience and they're going to produce what, 80 grand the first year, maybe. And so you're gonna bring someone in.
No, not 80 grand the first year. Come on.
They're gonna have some skills, right? And they're gonna understand that they want to work hard to get a part of the practice. I think it's very special. It's limited and finite. The number of people you're gonna get right out of school that are gonna be great for private practice dentistry.
Yep, I agree. I mean, honestly, I remember being so insulted when my first job. She looked at me and she said, "I can't hire you. You're right out of school." I was like, what does that mean? I got this new degree. Like, look at my new degree. It says I can. And she was like, no, I get it, but you're borderline dangerous. And I was like, ugh. So I agree with you. It's tough to hire right out of school because not that schools don't prepare us, but you just need some laps. You need some at bats.
Just for the sake of the conversation, are you saying GPR as well, or just fresh out of school, no GPR?
Good question.
No GPR, no group practice?
No. He's saying.
No, I'm talking to you, Peter.
Residency?
Straight out of a GPR, yes, absolutely. I will. A 2-year GPR, yes.
Okay.
it changes the game, because I think that's the tipping point where you get some laps, you get some at bats, you get a lot of exposure to dentistry. You're not just you're not academic anymore so much. You're literally treating lots of patients all day long, and you're in that environment. So yes, I would hire someone as a GPR for sure, out of a GPR.
So as a complete counterpoint, here's the rarity of it. So I'm up at Dr. Fred Sleet's in Michigan recently, and he had an associate come in, pretty fresh, and it worked out perfect. He had the right amount of patients. He's a teacher by nature, and it's been just fantastic. And he's down to his 2 days a week, and he's golfing more, and he's got a great practice, and he's basically molded this associate, now a partner, into his practice. He didn't create a separate class society in his practice or do a bunch of crazy things with his patient base. He took the time and invested in this person. But what a risk, right? You do that for 4 or 5 years as a private practice dentist, and then they bail.
Yeah.
Now what?
It's heartbreaking, right? Because you've got all this time at mentoring, curating them to kind of take over. Yeah, I'm sure it would be heartbreaking. So, but there really is no guarantee. That's why you almost have to start with, like, I have a local dentist friend of mine who he struggles with the associateship model a lot. And I said, look, you don't frame it as like they're coming on just to be your like hired gun and just work. Like it has to be, in my opinion, it has to be someone who could be a future partner of yours, whether that's a minority partner or whatnot. But you have to be, that's the mentality. You want that ownership mentality. Otherwise, it's going to be someone transient, in my opinion.
I mean, and you'll flesh out a lot of people. The owners want ownership, and people that are planning on parking themselves for a year, 2 or 3 don't. So it's actually a really good tool to flesh things out. I always say that people don't wash rental cars. Same thing. All the doctors I'm bringing on now had a big transition in my own practice.
That's perfect.
Yeah. That is a good one. That's one of your best, buddy, I have to say.
I don't know if it's mine, but I'll take it.
What does that mean, Craig?
I'm sorry?
They also don't wash their parents' cars. What does that mean? When my kids take my cars, they don't wash them.
Yeah,
that's another thing. Entitlement.
Entitlement. I was just about to say it.
I'm in the hunt right now for associate docs. The first thing I say is I expect you to show up acting as an owner, and ultimately I need you to be an owner. Meaning, like, if you want to show up and just kind of park yourself and don't have interest in being an owner, that actually speaks to me as well. I would want someone that wants to.
But it saves you a lot of time. It's almost like dating. When you're dating with someone, you're like, hey, I want 3 kids. And someone's like, well, I want 0. Be like, all right, well, this is not going to work. So let's not have date number 2. Right? Like, there's just no point of this. Yeah, so I think it's good. I think it's great to just like step in front of all this stuff, as opposed to, oh, great, I found a great warm body that wants to come in and see my patients. Like, but you're not beginning with the end in mind, going back to that. So it doesn't. I think that's why a lot of them fail. And I think that's why associateships have a bad reputation in the industry, and corporate has taken advantage of that. Like, oh, just come on and on board with us, and we'll provide all these economies of scales. And
for sure.
So,
well, relationships have a bad, all relationships have bad public opinion. Who would get married with a divorce rate of 64%? All 3 of us did it. I mean, I'm presuming, Trevor, you're married?
Yes.
Okay, so we all jumped into marriage. 64% chance.
See the sign in the corner? It says, we interrupt this marriage to bring you hockey season.
It does. It says it right up there. Right
see,
up there.
It's like hockey in Georgia. There, see, there it is again. It popped up twice in this conversation, Trevor.
I'm a fanatic.
Twice.
I didn't see that.
You can't see that in the corner?
It's above my finger.
Right my computer must be more high def than yours.
Yeah. I'm the sign that not popped up, but yeah.
See, Craig, that's my self-awareness. That's my awareness. My situational awareness is just much greater than yours, I guess.
I only put that under the TV in the playoffs. That's not the whole season.
Oh, okay.
Thank goodness. 2 months.
But it's just like, look, who would get married? Who would have children? Who would enter into any business relationship if we paid attention to the statistics? I mean, most businesses are likely to fail, statistically speaking. Most relationships are likely to fail, and most associateships and partnerships are likely to fail. So you either have 2 views of the world. It's like, why would I do that? Dr. Jones once did that. It wound up terrible. Or you keep persevering. One thing that I know is, Pete, you and I have had bad associateships. We've had bad relationships with other people. But what defines a successful person is their willingness to jump right back in and try it and take what they've learned and apply it into something new.
You both reminded me of a discussion I had about 2 years ago with the doc, and I've had this, now that I think about it, more than once, but this one resonates, is they're talking about this associate and, what they were going to do and when I was going to write the partner. And I said, well, what did you guys talk about when they started? Well, nothing.
Mhm.
but I think they want to do it. Well, have you talked to them in the 2 years they've been working for you? No, not about this. Like, how do you not have the discussion?
Yep.
Right?
But I think that's all too common. Like literally I think that's all too common. And so I'm glad that actually you're talking about this, because I think it's something that people either assumed or whatever. But Craig, you guys both bring up good points. Like if you're going to hire an associate, obviously do some soul searching, find the right time. Look at your data. The second question is, once you do in the interview process, ask these hard questions that may repel someone, but they also may attract someone.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Then you know what the other thing, the third part to that is, ask them again later on. Because I had
a situation changed
that said to me, all I really want is I want to work 3 days a week. He was a specialist. I want to work 3 days a week, but I want you to guarantee me that I always make $375,000 or $350,000. And actually I made the numbers work. So I said, okay, you'll make $350,000 on 3 days a week. Plus if you hit these targets, you'll get more. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do with the other 2 days? Well, I'm just really not that type of guy. I'm really about work-life balance and blah, 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 blah. And I just really want to just do my own thing and canoe on Fridays and, meditate on Thursdays. And a lovely guy, a really good friend of mine. But what changed? I didn't ask him again 3 years later. So 3 years or 4 years later, actually it was almost 4 years later, he just blindsides me one day and says, oh, by the way, I'm going to go work with this other dude 6 days a week and own a part of the practice. I'm like, bro, I would have loved you to have been. Remember the first 2 years I was begging you to work 5 days a week. You told me you want to canoe. So the moral of the story is you can't set it and forget it. People change. Have a couple extra kids. Maybe your wife or your husband gets in your ear. Who knows what happens? But even if the conversation is done, 3 years later, you want to check back in. Hey, are you still interested? Do you want to pursue another level? Are you making the money you want to? My goals were always, I wanted him to make more, because my last specialist that took his place was making like double what he was. So I was like, bro, you don't want me? Yeah, it's work-life balance, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, I'm not here to insist my values on you, but his values changed. And I said to him, like, well, bro, why don't we talk about this? And he's like, geez, I wish I would have talked to you about this sooner, because
I've already pulled trigger and signed other contracts.
I'm like, whoa, man, are you joking? How long you known this other person? A little, 6 months. I'm like, we've known each other a long time.
We met online.
Yeah, we met online. I mean, fortunately for him, I'm happy that it's working out well. He's doing well. But he went from 3 days a week to 6 days a week. And all that changed was time. So I think
these are good. This is all good.
But it's true. It's you can't just set and forget it. Like your wife, even in your own personal relationship, your wife, it used to be that, she just really valued time and presence or whatever.
Trevor, it's hard down here in the trenches, just so you know, buddy. It's hard down here.
It is, bro.
Grinding it out, eh?
It's every day is a grind. No pun intended. Every day is a grind.
Until you start a podcast, and then life is rosy.
Hey, I'll tell you what. Hey, if I had known how much money podcasting makes, I would have started this a long time ago. It's a big fat zero.
Actually, no, it's not zero. It's negative.
Negative zero. Yeah, that's right. It's a negative until you start a podcast. Trevor asked me before, like we started, Craig. He's like, so why are you doing this?
The same thing with the book, Peter. The first line out of our, we had our publisher. Why do you want to write a book? And we're like, well, to give back. Why not? Like, we've never really had someone that's not selling something with a book.
That's because he knew the cost of putting the book out and the cost that you'd be able to sell it for, and didn't tell us that, like, oh, by the way, you're gonna lose money every time you sell a book.
I know. No one told me that. No one told us that.
Oh man. Anyway,
it's going to be like $30,000. Oh no, we had no idea.
No.
We'll sell something. I'll sell Slinkies.
You need a big sponsor, and then you can speak, and then you can autograph the copies.
Slinkies with a Sharpie.
Anything. Buy a book and get a rose gold Slinky. Something. I had no idea it was going to be this much money. Now, of course, we want to emboss the cover for an extra couple $1,000s. I never knew.
I mean, you've got to do that.
Cover the little raises.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, it's a bulletproof dental practice, so we have to have bullet holes, and it's resisting bullets, and the bullets have to be embossed. I mean, there's only one way to do it.
And they say, hey, entry level books do this, but like all the great authors, they do this. And so, like, what are you gonna say? Like, we're sure as shit not great authors, so
Attention, all cone beam sellers, please go to their practices tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. I mentioned Bulletproof. No, you buy it.
Yeah, Bulletproof.
You
for
need
10
this to survive.
Oh, the slapstick is just fun. I always forget that we are still recording. Trevor, thanks for coming on the podcast, buddy. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed catching up with you. And we should do it. We should do it live in person since we live in the same city and catch up, bud.
Some good food with you. Do I get to plug our website?
Of course.
Do I
Go.
earn that? So,
Smilesource.com
or join smilesource.com. Happy to talk to you.
Awesome.
Nice.
See you guys.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Take care, guys.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you.